the secret to making toms stand out in a mix. In today's episode, I'm going to go over my technique with programmed drums to make my toms stand out from my kick drum, as well as what I do during fills to make them stand out and sound a little bit more real. So if that interests you, let's jump right in. So first off, the floor tom and the kick drum are both in similar frequency ranges, but they have their own defining qualities. Basically, I get my kick drum sounding to a point that I like it clicky enough and subby enough. I usually like to use a channel strip on toms. So I'm just going to put this SSL channel strip on, and let's listen to the kick alone. So it's quite subby and quite clicky. Luckily, the toms don't need sub. They have some sub ranges in them, but they don't need them. So let's go through. With toms in general, in the high mids, I like to find where it sounds like the stick is hitting the skin. And I find that's usually between 1.5 and 2K. So real quick, let's boost that, and then we'll listen to where it sounds like the tom is being hit. I'm going to go with a really thin broadband there. So anywhere in that range, I really like it around there. So without that, and then with it, a lot more attack and a lot more presence just with the EQ alone. And then also boosting the high end really makes it stand out. And it's weird because with toms, especially the floor tom, there is a lot of sub frequency that you can hear in there, but as soon as you put it in the mix, the sub disappears from the guitars, the bass, and the kick drum. So you don't need to worry about that too much. I used to really try to get that sub to push through, and I just ended up with a blurry mess. So I typically just cut off sub frequencies from about 60 hertz because my kick is really present in like 60 hertz down. So I just cut it out because the toms don't need that much sub. That's way too much, obviously. So that to me is good. So for example, we'll go with this fill at the end of the chorus. And then I also cut just a little bit of low mids if I need to. Let me loop this part to figure out where I want to cut the low mids. I'm going to cut a little bit of 800 hertz just because there's a lot of bass and a lot of guitar in there and it's not really adding. And then sometimes I'll add a little bit of bell on 100 hertz just to make the sub frequencies come out before it goes to the super subs where I cut. So that's how you make them stand out. As you can tell, made a huge difference. So then also with programming fills, if you want it to sound a little bit more real, you can see right here, everything is kind of just stacked. I like my kicks to be pretty much consistent the whole way through. But if you want to make your fills and your drums in general sound more real, usually the first hit with a drummer is stronger than the next one. So you can see here, this one should be lower. They're both at 123 because I'm a psycho. So 123, let's mess with them a little bit. And that's technically a little bit more real. Let's push and pull the fills a bit too, make them a little bit later or earlier, like a real drummer would. Cool. And that's how you make things sound a little bit more real. It's very unnoticeable because when we're mixing real drums, we grid the hell out of them anyways, because we're used to that. That's what we're used to with modern metal. So this next section is the reason why I decided to make this video in the first place. I was working on a mix where I actually programmed the drums for the band as well, and there's a section where there's like toms and snare going off, and when I originally programmed them, it's just gridded, so it's like 100% on the grid. But when everything's on the grid, you can't hear the different drums. It just sounds like a mess of drums. So I'll show you what I mean right here. Like, you can't even tell there's a floor tom there. It just sounds like snare. So the easiest and probably best way to get around that is to just nudge it over the slightest bit, the floor or the snare. So before, no defining quality of the tom, and then after, moving it over slightly to the right. Let me loop that. So this is it with everything 100%. So this is what it sounds like with the tom nudged over a little bit. And then experiment with trying that with the snare. And I kind of notice in general, whatever is pushed over to the right, whatever's pushed over later sounds less impactful. You'll hear both, you'll hear the separation because they're not happening at the exact same time. And this is actually like how a drummer would play, because nobody in the world is dead perfect with their timing. Maybe like 10 people in the world. So although it's flamming a lot more there, you can actually hear the separation between the snare, the kick, and the floor tom. And then if we want, we can also move the kick drum over a little bit more too. And that way we get the ultimate separation. You can hear the separation instantly. Try it with the snare. I personally like having my snare pushed a little bit later more than I like having my floor tom pushed a little bit later, only because the snare has defining qualities like the under snare wire, where the floor tom doesn't have that. So having the floor tom be first and then the snare directly after it, you'll hear the floor tom first and your ear goes to there and it recognizes that there's a floor tom, and then it hears the snare wire so it knows there's a snare there too. And actually, I guess what I should have done is ramp all this up. I should have just taken my pencil, done something like this. And then also, if I really wanted to, I would go more in depth and probably push all these over a little bit and whatever. But anyways, that's besides the point. So cool, this is what I do every time I'm programming drums. I hope this helps in your journey, and if you found any use in this video, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and send me a comment down below. Let me know what your techniques are if I haven't gone through anything. Thanks so much, and I'll see you next time. See ya.